وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, in fact, I am not in my city. I live in Florida, but I'm in Iowa. I'm busy here, but I insist actually to listen to Brother Yusuf today. I'm listening, not speaking. Why? Last week he came to my office and he spoke so beautiful and important things. Quran. Together he may speak about that, plus about Biden and Trump with the city the debate. And the good completely about our theory, about Islam theory, and alhamdulillah, our Islam is right. So an honor to have Brother Yusuf to speak, Brother Joseph to speak, Brother, to listen to him. The same thing, please, sisters and brothers, Sunnah followers, whatever you hear today, try to write it down and share it. Is very important, especially now. The election is very soon, and a lot of people will be voting. I am not going to vote, but a lot of Muslims, they are voting, encouraging either others to vote. Please, brothers and sisters, an honor, Brother Joseph. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Yusuf. Please. Brother Yusuf. Brother Yusuf. Brother Yusuf, you are mute. Your phone.
Okay, she unmuted me. I was on mute.
Yes, now yes. Please.
Okay. Thanks a lot, to everyone. It's good to be back. It's been since, I believe, the beginning of December. Real life happens, lots of other things occur, and obviously I'd like to be here more. My first time not speaking to a live audience, so this is a little bit different for me. I hope I don't stutter on my words, because I'm used to the energy of the crowd, if you will, and the eye contact and all those things. And when you're kind of doing the hardest presentations I've ever done in my life were ones I did for college, where I had to make videos and upload them because I felt I was talking to myself. So I got the shake in front of me so I could see someone, I could look at someone's eye. There's that human element to this. So yes, and as the Sheikh pointed out, we will be getting to Christianity and the relationship between what we call Christianity and the modern world, and we're going to go through the history of that. It's a very ambitious project coming down the line, a couple of weeks. In the meantime, I had a series that I entitled Appearances versus Reality. And this is going to be the first segment of that series because this is election season. And all my life as an American, being very politically savvy, someone who reads a lot, someone who's familiar with what's being put out there, what the discourse is, people always would come to me and ask me, well, who are you voting for? And I always usually gave them the same answer. Absolutely no one. And today I'm going to kind of make the case as to, and I'm going to expose this system as much as I can within the hour time that we have. I'm going to expose all the ins and outs of it. I'm going to expose the lies. I'm going to expose the corruption. This could be 30 hours worth of content. I try to compress a lot of things down here into an hour. And I want to begin with, again, the theme of this series, appearances versus reality. And let's turn to the Quran and Surah Al-Kahf. And one of my favorite stories, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has immortalized for all of humanity in the Quran, is the story of Khidr and Moses, or Musa. And we see in that story the very profound lesson of appearances versus reality, as Khidr is guiding Moses. Moses is a righteous man. He's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is here to teach his people, to build a nation. So he's the ultimate of good heart and trustworthiness. And as he's going through these trials with Khidr, he's constantly questioning him. Even though he was warned in the beginning, do not question me. You must have faith. He sees Khidr put the hole in the boat. Immediately, Musa's heart reacts and he says, what are you doing? These poor people, how are you going to harm them? Then he goes and he sees, the slaying of the child. He's like, oh, you're a murderer. What are you doing? And then he sees the town reject them. They refuse to feed them. They treat them inhospitable. And he goes and he repairs the wall. And he's like, you're not going to ask for any compensation, for this. And of course, that being kind of Khidr's lie in the sand, that he had had enough. And then he unveiled the truth about what each one of these actions meant. The first one obviously was to protect the people. At face value, it looked like something horrible, something evil. What are you doing to these people? How could you do that? But then as he saw what actually unfolded was that he was protecting them from pirates who would have confiscated everything they were worth. In the case of the child, he was protecting the righteous parents who deserved a righteous son. And in the case of the wall, he was looking out not for the townspeople who threw them out or refused to feed them or were inhospitable to them. He was looking out for the orphans, who came from a righteous father. And the core of that lesson is so profound, of us using our heart and our brain and all of our senses together when we make a decision. What are we judging here in this reality? Appearances can be one thing, but the reality can be something quite different. Now, in that story, the twist was the actions seemed apparently to be wicked, but yet were supremely righteous. Well, what I'm going to be focusing on is what we see in the modern world of actions which appear to be righteous or appear to be good on the surface, but what's beneath them is something quite ugly. And I'm going to encourage everyone today, when we start talking about politics, Democrat, Republican, these political parties, to just simply look with an open mind. Listen to what I'm saying, and of course, do your own research. And tell me if I'm telling lies, so to speak, as we're going to be unveiling things here today. So that being the kind of preface as we are going to begin, politics is professional wrestling, as I once told my friend many years ago. And what I mean by that, when I was about 8 years old, my mother used to take me to the local stadium to watch the wrestling matches. And you couldn't tell me as an 8-year-old boy that it was phony, that these guys didn't really despise each other, and they weren't trying to tear each other limb from limb as I was watching the show. One day, I'll never forget it, I was at the show, and I looked up in the catwalk in the ceiling. And there were two of the wrestlers who were watching the matches that were going on, who were actually going to be fighting in the main event. And they were enemies on camera. But yet you could see them shaking hands and patting each other on the back as they were up there in civilian clothes. And me as a child, it was kind of traumatizing. I said to myself, what in the world is this? How? Last week I saw them hit this man with a chair and they did this to him and that to him, and now they're friends. And it really kind of opened my eyes. Wait a minute, maybe this stuff is fake. Maybe this stuff isn't real. And that's kind of, again, to set the table for this political dance that we get ourselves involved in every 4 years. Sometimes people vote in local elections, they get involved every 2. Is that on the surface, you see a Donald Trump and you see a Kamala Harris and you see this. You see them attacking each other. You see Donald Trump recently called her a left-wing fanatic, which by most measurements and assessments, she is. But Donald Trump donated to her campaign when she was Attorney General twice. In fact, when she was in the state of California. Donald Trump said he was going to jail Hillary Clinton. We all saw how that went. That was the promise. So again, it's this appearances versus reality. On the camera, they're the enemy. Behind the scenes, they're the best of friends. The ultimate prize is stealing our energy, our time, our efforts, and getting us sucked into this cheap tribalism, which is what they are promoting. And I'm going to ask this question as we're going on to that. Why would they want office? The average salary, for those of you who don't know, for introductory senators and representatives in the United States is $175,000 per year. The president of the United States is approximately about $250,000 to $275,000 per year. Why are these people raising billions of dollars, spending all this time, effort, and energy for such low salaries? Then when you look at what their net worths are after they've been in office for 10, 20, 30 years, like the case of Nancy Pelosi, she's worth over $100 million. This woman is a career politician. How is she making it? That's the best savings. I wish I could save money like that. To make $175,000 to $200,000 a year and have $100 million after being, the math just doesn't add up. Where is she getting the money from? Why is this position so coveted? Why are they fighting for it, at least allegedly, figuratively, for these roles so much? Well, because again, at the end of the day, what we are going to be speaking of, it's all one big game. It's all one big charade. They are here to enrich themselves off the detriment of us. All we have to gain by supporting them, by following them, is anger, frustration, bitterness towards our fellow Americans, to our own citizens. I mean, I've personally been kicked out of people's homes before. They told me just leave because I was speaking ill of certain members of the Democratic Party. I've had the opposite happen. I've had people threaten to punch me in the face because I criticized George W. Bush back in 2004 or 2003, right when the peak of his powers, so to speak. So this stuff gets right to the core of tribalism. And all for what? For people who are up there enriching themselves, who, as we are going to see, never vote in our best interest, no matter which one you get. And how that cycle typically works is you have 4 years, they pledge something to you, they go to Washington, nothing gets done, everything gets worse, and then what happens? The people say on the social media and in their groups, wait 4 more years, we're going to get them. And they wait the 4 more years, they go out there and they try to primary them, vote for someone else, and guess what? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, they get a new face, they get someone else that comes in there, and they do the exact same thing. I've been watching this all throughout my life, and people just have not woken up, actually, to this reality, that it does not matter who you vote for. The agenda by the elite, the men behind the curtain, never changes. An example, if you go back to medieval times or monarchy nations or dictatorships, if the people are seeing that their value, their quality of life is steadily going down, what is going to happen? They are going to direct all of that anger onto a central figure. They know where the blame lies. But the genius of this so-called representative government is the anger is now split up. It's divided among, it's the Congress. And something interesting about that, they had a poll a few years ago. I chuckled when I read this. They asked the average American what they thought of their congressman. The average American said, my congressman's great. And they gave an over 60% approval rating. But then when they asked them of Congress as a whole, they said, no, they're bad. Our guy's good, but they're bad. It was about 20% approval rating. So as you can see where this is going. So again, as I was mentioning about the central control and blame, now in this system, the Republicans can say, the Democrats, they won't compromise. The Democrats can say, the Republicans won't compromise. But I'm going to show you today several examples of legislation where they had no issue compromising. Anytime the legislation benefits their donors or benefits them, you never hear, they couldn't compromise, it just couldn't happen. Like when it comes to giving the American people aid or tax breaks or all of these other positive things that would stimulate our lives, they can't come to an agreement. But when it comes to raising your college tuition like they did in North Carolina a few years ago, 90% of them came to an agreement. Republican and Democrat, they crossed the aisles, as they like to say. They had no problem in helping the colleges to raise my tuition if I wanted to go to school there. They have no issue doing that. When it comes to raising taxes, they have no issue doing that again. So this is a perfect system for control. Because again, you don't know where the blame lies. Everybody looks at it individually or collectively. We don't see the donors. We don't see the lobbyists. We don't see the people behind the scenes. It's always a flash bomb over here while I watch the action over there. And an example of that just happened 2 days ago, was in Washington, D.C. The war criminal, Netanyahu, was speaking in front of our Congress. He got, I think it was 50-something standing ovations during that speech, which was a record that he broke of his own. So he's the only one that's gotten that high, and he topped his own record. What was going on outside? Another one of these phony protests, these phony Palestinian protests where they had people who clearly were not Muslim, were out there defacing American property, were burning the American flag. So what does the media do? Look over here, ignore what's going on over there. They're burning the flag. And I saw so much anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim, comments when the people that were burning the flag clearly were not even Muslim. This guy was, he obviously looked like Netanyahu's type of class of people, if you will. And you saw several other people who just looked like regular run-of-the-mill Americans. These were not Arabs. These were not your traditional Muslims in terms of appearance and dress. But again, that was the distraction. So it's misplaced anger, directing people the wrong way. So let's look now in this section a little bit of what they stand for so I can make the voting make a little bit more sense. Because to understand this, where the Democratic Party is now is where they want to take the country. The purpose of the Republican Party is to give you an illusion, appearance versus reality again, that there's some type of opposition to this. And I use examples. If you go back and you look at Bill Clinton, I was a teenager during the time that Bill Clinton was in office. If you compare what Bill Clinton was doing policy-wise to what you've seen from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, Bill Clinton is a right-wing radical. I mean, the left has just continuously shifted and shifted and shifted. The LGBTQ issue is a perfect example of this. Bill Clinton was don't ask, don't tell. Then you got to Barack Obama the first term. He pretty much kept the line of Clinton. But once he got in again, all of a sudden it was like, okay, marriage. Okay, acceptance. Okay, non-binary comes in. And then you got Trump. Now, Trump's supposed to be right-wing, but yet he was doing things, gays for Trump. I love the LGBTQ people. And then you have Joe Biden. It's much worse. As we can see, it's shifting, constantly. The Republican Party is always there to provide an illusion that this agenda is being stopped, that there's somebody fighting for you to kind of slow it down. And we look at, again, I did a video on this back in October. We're just going to kind of go through them quickly here. Some of the signature positions of the left, and I'm going to ask the audience if these align with Quran and Sunnah. Obviously, we have the climate change agenda. This is one of the new ones that they've invented over the last 20 plus years. And again, you always have to ask yourself, if there really is a problem, what would be the natural solutions and what solutions are they offering? Well, the solutions that they're offering are restrictions on your ability to drive. They plan on doing this through electric vehicles where they can simply enter numbers on a keyboard and cut you off. At any given moment in time, you will not be able to operate your vehicle. The World Economic Forum has said this. They want one car for every 4 or 5 houses, and have a kind of communal sharing or have it on autopilot where a drone or artificial intelligence, operates the vehicle. So how are they going to push that? They got to get the public to want it. They've got to get the public to accept it. So what they do is they say, oh, if you don't do this, the planet is just going to heat up and all your food is going to be gone and we're all going to be extinct. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala built a pretty good planet, pretty strong planet, pretty balanced planet. There's zero evidence for any of this stuff along the lines of what they're saying. Another part of that agenda, I heard Kamala Harris saying this recently, they don't want us eating meat. Why? Well, if anyone who does research on the benefits of eating meat and eggs in particular are loaded with vitamins. They're very good for the brain. They want us dumbed down, docile, and weak. This is why they're pitching this plant-based hamburgers and plant-based chicken, which is loaded with canola oil. Don't have time to get into it. Just Google canola oil. It was originally lubricant for engines. It is nothing that we should be putting in our bodies. So these are the solutions. And then, of course, taxing all of us even more is another solution, they say, for our carbon footprint to reduce it. And again, this is anti-freedom. It's anti-common sense. It's anti-humanity. If these people have their way, again, we'll be eating slop literally off the floor. I mean, they've already talked about insects. They have insect growing factories now trying to push this agenda of getting us to eat insect proteins instead of actually eating the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, the lamb, the sheep, the cow, the chicken. Another big thing for them is abortion. And I just saw another one of these the other day, and it was like the majority of women in this country, how far they have fallen. Their reason they vote for the Democratic Party is because of this issue. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, is killing babies really that important to you? What spirit is really possessing an individual where their number one issue is I need to have irresponsible mating with people I don't intend to marry, and I can kill the kids afterwards? I mean, this just, as always, this issue has boggled my mind. And one of the common defenses you'll see of this issue is they are going to say, oh, it's because of rape. Women get raped, they need to have an abortion. 1%, according to the latest studies, of abortions are in rape cases. Most of these are what I described. She met a guy at the bar, they had no morals, they went and they did what they did, and now they don't want any responsibility for what they have created. And I mean, when you hear these people speak, it's very eerie. It's demonic in a way. the way they talk about, they laugh, they make jokes about killing the babies. And the majority of Democrat women, this is their number one issue. This is what matters to them the most, Another big thing with the Democratic Party is racial division. The Democrats love promoting racial hate. This is one of their big selling points, trying to pit everybody against each other, particularly white males are the number one enemy. Something interesting about that, if you look at some of the big ones who do this, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you see Kamala Harris, you see Susan Rice, guess what? They're all married to white males. So on one hand, on the camera, they're promoting all this division and the white males are the worst people on the face of the earth. And then on the other hand, they're actually married to white males. And if that doesn't tell you who they really serve at the end of the day, I don't know what will, because obviously who they are in their personal lives is not what they're marketing in the public. They're doing this, again, to sow the seeds of racial division. It goes back to the tribalism that I talked about. In Islam, a perfect Islamic society, we don't have these things. We have different shades of all the beautiful colors Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made. We don't have these divisions, but these people are here to stoke it. They're here to turn every issue into a racial issue where it had nothing of the sort. And then you see, again, as I pointed out, in their personal lives, what are they doing? And we're going to get to some more of that stuff as we get to the end of this and when we start unveiling some of the administrations. And again, this is where they're wanting to take the country. And of course, the last one that you can't ignore is, there's two of them actually, open borders and the LGBTQ agenda. Open borders is a huge leftist position. Most Americans, when polled, they are very open people. We don't have any problem with good immigrants coming in here, but no society can take in unlimited amounts of people. I mean, I'm a very charitable person, but I can't open my home up and house 30 families. There's going to be limits. Our housing in this country for Americans is insane at this point. My rent has gone up $700 in 2 years. And the reason for that is because there's such an influx of people. There's such a demand for housing that the supply is not matching that. So, of course, it's a race to the top. Landlords win. All the donors, again, going back to those people, they love open borders. But the average American who's trying to build a family, trying to get a job, trying to survive, obviously, this is a detriment, to them. And you can't even assimilate this many people this quick. So that's another one of the issues there. And, of course, LGBTQ. When you look around the country and you see our schools where our children are being subjected to all the false history, all the false sciences are now infused basically into public education. More American kids than ever identify as LGBTQ. This is pure indoctrination. This is pure indoctrination in every sense of the word. So 66% of Muslims voted for this in the last election. Me and Sheikh were talking about this last week in the Biden connections. And, a lot of them, when you ask them why, a lot of them would say, they were more accommodating to immigrants, or the Palestine issue, which is now should really have woken the Muslim community up, because we have had a Democrat in power the entire duration of this crisis that's going on. 12,000 children or more. Sheikh could give me the exact numbers on that. But I was like 12,000 souls, extinguished. Children, innocent, non-military combatants. And we've seen nothing from this party. We've seen some of them come out there and they do their Palestine chants and all this and this and that, but go look at them. Look at the Ilhan Omars. Look at the Rashida Tlaibs. Look how they voted. When push came to shove and they had to vote on whether or not to put that funding bill through, which was going to give Israel its annual few $1 billion that we give. It's an annual tradition here in America. We give billions of dollars to the state of Israel. Did any of these people resist? Have any of them ever, resisted? And the answer, of course, is very obvious. The show goes on. So when you go to the right wing now, we're going to look at the Republican Party. They recently had a convention. And as a Muslim, I was absolutely disgusted in watching that convention. We're going to get to reasons why here in a minute. On face value, the Republican Party aligns much more with Islamic values, except what we're going to get to. They're very pro-Second Amendment. I'm a big advocate of owning a firearm. I love my wife and my kids, and there's crazy people in the world. I'm going to do everything I can to protect them. It's an Islamic duty to protect ourselves. Prophet ﷺ and the companions all protected themselves. They all carried arms. They never traveled on any kind of diplomatic mission or any caravan trading without taking arms. of some kind, the arms equivalent of the time. Very strong issue. When you go to the Republicans, you're typically going to get more pro firearms. Tax breaks for the rich. This is a big one that's been a thing for the Republican Party as long as I've been alive. You go back to the days of Reagan, and Reagan created what they call trickle-down economics. If you give the rich more money, it'll trickle down. Don't worry, you're going to be okay. You're going to get some of the droppings, if you will, they leave behind. And of course, we saw, for people who were aware in the Reagan administration, that just simply did not work. For the average, everyday, hardworking American, it was an illusion. But one of the tricks of the Republican Party is they want to trick you that one day you will be rich too. So you should value these people now because one day you might be one of them. This is kind of conveyed indirectly a lot of the time. Don't worry, you'll be up there one day too, and you'll be able to reap all the benefits of this. And of course, we know, and the reality is it's an elite club, and unless you're willing to everything but sell your soul directly to Shaitan, in some cases, probably even that, are not going to be in that exclusive club that's going to receive these benefits. One of the other big things, traditional family, this is a very good platform for the Republicans. They do advocate marriage. They are anti-abortion for the most part. These are things that we in the Islamic community agree with. For me personally, the border issue that I mentioned, and we're going to come to that because Donald Trump, remember, he was the outsider. Donald Trump was the guy, although they don't want him there. He's going to stop this, and the special interests they're shaking. Well, there's some interesting statistics about Mr. Donald Trump. In his tenure in office, he deported about 950,000 illegal aliens. Barack Obama deported 3 million. Now, granted, Obama was in 8 years, but still, if you look at the math, Obama deported far more than Donald Trump did. But yet, when the media, again, perception and reality, appearances versus reality, Donald Trump is tough on immigration. He's closing the border, but yet not so fast. Barack Obama actually did a better job in terms of removing. These are just inconvenient statistics that a lot of right-wing people don't want to hear. But the elephant in the room with the Republican Party is what we witnessed in their convention last week. You had, the week before, you had several really, just as a Muslim man, proud Muslim man in this country, were just absolutely disgusting. One thing we saw was they led a prayer for the Israeli hostages. It was, to me, as I was watching it, it's kind of like when you see someone do something really bad in public and you're like, are they really doing that? Are they really seriously? It's like your brain is kind of in a state of flux. And that's kind of how I was. Not the children, not the innocent Palestinians as well. Now, I can understand saying a prayer, for all the innocent Israelis as well. Of course, we don't condone any innocent people, Jew, Gentile, doesn't matter, white, black, Arab, Asian. No innocent people. But they didn't even acknowledge all of the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that have been killed. And I just, again, was really taken back by that. And they also did something. They brought this Jewish gentleman out there who goes by the name of Shabbos, let me pronounce this, Kestenbaum. And this gentleman got a standing ovation. What was his speech? He was speaking about how he was going to go to Harvard and sue them. Sue them why? Because they dared to allow Palestinian voices and pro-Palestinian messages to be promoted in the campus of Harvard. The campus, I'm sorry. Again, I'm sitting there looking at this, with disbelief. This is America. The Republican Party is supposed to be the party of free speech and expression and being allowed to exercise your God-given right to protest and to criticize. And he's saying that, no, that's not happening. But where was Mr. Shabbos when there was a professor at Harvard calling to kill all white American males? I don't remember him being out there for that. And that's happened so many times I'd fill up the page. But once we started speaking about issues that were affecting his clique, his club, he felt the need to exercise his powers of attorney and go and get all of his lawyers. And they celebrated this man at this convention. They were openly beating the drums of war, if you will, for Iran. As an outcome, Israel's won that war for quite some time. The American people have nothing to gain from that war. The Muslim community obviously has nothing to gain from that war. So we're in this situation, right? You got all this just filthy immorality, destructive fiscal policies over here. But then on this side, you got some morality. You got your family, you got your firearms, you got freedom of speech. But then you have all these things who they showed us who they really are. So again, as a Muslim, what are we, really to do? And let's go back and look at some of the past presidents, if you will, so that we see this not just a recent phenomenon. We can go back to George W. Bush. This is we're not going to go back even farther than that because we'd be here all day, but George W. Bush was the reformer with results as he ran on. He was going to cross the aisles and he was going to unify the country. And of course, we know what happened under George Bush's watch. We had the greatest false flag attack in the history of the world. That was blamed on who, as all of us, as we were taking so much Islamophobia, so much hate. I remember I wasn't Muslim at the time, but we were out, me and my friend, and there were people saying we need to turn all those Arabs into a parking lot and all these type of racial things that were being said over that. And of course, that obviously Arabs had nothing to do with that. Obviously, Islam had nothing to do with that. If anyone wants to hear what I have to say, we can do a separate video in entirety just on that case alone. But when George W. Bush had that, and when I talk again about images and appearances, they have to set this up like a movie so that the average American person can identify with it. So you had here George Bush. He's got the cowboy hat. He's got the Texas accent. He was born in Pennsylvania. None of his family speaks like that. Ask yourself why. Why is this man of all of them speaking with a Texas accent, but yet the rest of his family members do not, when he's not even from Texas? It was imagery. He's the cowboy, and then you have the bad guy, the Darth Vader character, if you will, is Osama bin Laden. It's simple propaganda that the most slowest of person can understand and the most intellectual of people can understand or see through in the cases of a lot of us. And you had this conflict there. There has to be a resolution. Good guys versus bad guys. George Bush famously said, you're with us or you're with the terrorists. And what did he do? He came right after the rights of the American people. He passed or got the Patriot Act passed, which right after 9/11, this massive piece of legislation was already ready to be voted on. There would have been no way all the lawyers could have analyzed this, wrote this down coherently and within that short period of time. And what did our two-party system vote on? Well, the Senate 98-1 to have this unlimited potential to search and spy on Americans. The House of Representatives 357-66. They certainly crossed the aisles here, didn't they? And the Patriot Act is so confusing. I used to do a challenge. I walk into the break room at my job and I'd say, I give everybody $100 if you can tell me what these two paragraphs mean.
Sir.
What happened? Not a single person in the room was able to do that. And I don't blame them. I couldn't do it either without having a help from a lawyer to really understand how sophisticated this was. But what ended up happening was they, again, through 9/11, they created the biggest permission for them to spy and to seize our bank accounts just because we might be a terrorist. They can detain you with no due process of law. So again, you see problem, reaction, solution. They do the false flag. They stage the event, blame it on Muslims. The public is outraged. They're afraid. Now you give them where you knew you were going to go to begin with. The other big thing that came out of this, the Iraq War. The Iraq War, when it was time to vote, you had 48 Republicans voting for this, every one of them but one. And you had 29 of the Democrats voting for this. So the Iraq War, who Saddam Hussein had nothing, according to even their own lies, had nothing to do with this, but yet the war was laying at his feet. And of course, later on, George Bush would say, yeah, we made it up. There was no weapons of mass destruction there. He's mocking us. So in 2004, okay, here's the challenge. The American public was starting to see through a little bit. They're like, we don't like this. We don't want these perpetual wars. Who was the opposition? It was John Kerry. John Kerry came through, and John Kerry's line was, well, I voted for the Iraq War. Yeah, I did. I voted for the Patriot Act. Yeah, I did. But you know what? I was for it then. I'm against it now. When it was time for the pen to meet the paper, he obviously signed on to the agenda. as they all do. And he ran on that premise. Of course, he lost. And the interesting thing about those two was they both were from the exact same secret society fraternity based out of Yale. What are the odds of that? It's in fact 0.1%. That you would have their two guys running for president just so happen to be fraternity brothers from the same secret, elusive, rich boy only club based out of Yale. So here's our choice again, America. So we stay in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have 4 more years of this. And then here comes the savior, Barack Obama. He's coming in and he's not special interest. He's different. You know, he's not from them, as I kept hearing. And of course, they took advantage of his race to build trust among the African-American community, to build trust among the Hispanic community, and a lot of the white community, of course, as well. I remember I saw Obama for the first time in 2004. I was watching the Democratic convention. No one knew who he was. And God is my witness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my witness. I was watching with my friend, and we started hearing this voice in the background. I just kind of froze, and I stopped, and I looked at him. And I was just kind of captivated by how good of a speaker he was, how well he commanded the audience. I looked at my friend, I said, we're going to see this guy again. This guy is going to be a big deal. He's got it. This is a perfect agenda guy for them. He ticks all the boxes. They'll really be able to package him. And sure enough, they did. And Obama was the iron fist, but with the velvet glove. He was all the soft and gentle words, but behind it, it was the same thing with Bush. The drone strikes under Obama increased as that technology became more and more available. Obama basically reneged on almost every one of his promises that he pledged to the American people. He brought in, of course, that big handout, the insurance companies, known as the Affordable Care Act. Thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had me in Saudi during that time because I don't know how I could have paid for my family with having to pay, being forced by the government to pay this kind of money for healthcare. I mean, insurance companies loved him. And again, we got 8 years of that, and the African-American community in particular believed that there would be something to help them or to elevate them. And what we found with Obama was what? The LGBTQ community. We started seeing the homosexuals being marketed, the gay marriage. We started seeing all of that stuff. And of course, we saw the beginnings of the real green agenda. The gas prices were through the roof. They were trying to get all that stuff in. And then along came Trump. And Trump was the savior. You know, he was here to turn it around. And all of us who've lived through that, obviously we know what hollow rhetoric that was. So certainly when you go back and you look at Obama, you look at Trump, you look at Bush, how was their cabinets constructed? Well, let's go into that a little bit here. George Bush had 31 Zionists in his administration over the course of the 8 years. So in comparison to what some of the numbers we're going to get to, this is relatively small. But these are big positions. Donald Rumsfeld, obviously, who had no military experience at all of a sudden he's in there. You had Madeleine Albright, who once said Iraqi children dying was a good thing because the end of the day would be the end of terrorism, so killing the kids is no problem. You had such great people in that administration. So when Obama came, the savior, obviously it would be different, of course, right? Well, wrong, as usual. 38 Zionists were in the Obama administration. Some prominent, figures there. Eric Holder, part Jewish, the Attorney General. He part of Fast and Furious, supplying guns and all kinds of other things to South American drug cartels. Very, again, charming individual. So when Trump came, Trump is really going to fix this because he spoke. He told us special interests. He was going to get rid of them. Well, Donald Trump had 19. So if you look at Bush, Donald Trump is about on pace to beat George Bush's 31. But Donald Trump had those 4 years. He had 19, including the Zionist, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who married to his daughter, big land guy, heavy Israel supporting Zionist. And then that brings us to the current administration that we have now. And this number will make everyone's jaw drop. How many Zionists are in the Biden administration? 56. And he's only had 4 years. They replace these guys because these guys, they move on. They go take other jobs here and there. It's a revolving door. You serve in government, You mess over the people, you take your bribes, and waiting for you is a beautiful CEO job, a beautiful director job, where you get all the benefits of being a government representative, as I talked about earlier, then accepting that salary. And now you're on the board of some multinational corporation making even more money with more connections and resume. 56 Zionists on the Biden administration. I mean, unprecedented amount. And as we're seeing, as I'm someone who studies charts, a lot for investments, we're seeing what they call an uptrend. Bush was here a little bit, then Obama a little bit, Trump dipped, but overall the trend is mooning, so to speak. It's going to the moon. I mean, what's left? I mean, after 56, 100? And 66% of Muslims, again, went out and spent their time, their gas, their mental and physical energy supporting this. When at the end of the day, we can see the results, obviously, that are going on. It's unbelievable. And they're stealing our energy. They're stealing our valuable, precious energy. I mean, energy is everything. It's what we do where we salah, we pray, we fast, we give charity, we read Quran. We only have so much energy that we use per day, so much our mind can handle, so much our body can handle. And to spend our time being just blinded by this show, and that is exactly what it is. I want everyone to please just try to view this with new eyes. When you see them, look who their friends are. Look who Donald Trump famously said back in, I think, 2004. He said, if I ever ran for president, I'd run as a Republican because the followers are a bunch of idiots and I could just wave flags around and they'd follow me. And sure enough, he just did a speech where he talked about for about 2 minutes how beautiful the flag was. It wasn't even substance or policy behind it. He was just throwing red meat rhetoric. Oh, the flag is great. It's beautiful. I love America. God bless America. And the people are just, yeah, rah, rah, rah. And just, again, giving so much of their mental, physical, and their entire soul to these people who are doing nothing but selling us a bag of goods and lying, to us, taking our time. When I mentioned the part about Islam being right, we've got the blueprint. We have to focus on cleaning our own house. Because no matter what we vote, as I showed, you're going to get the same legislation. You're going to get the same policies. You are going to get the same consensus on all the issues that harm us. I guarantee you, remember they had recently with Israel support. It was almost 99%, in the Congress signed off on unlimited support for Israel. It didn't matter if we voted for the left or the right. We've got to focus on being good Muslims in our community, most importantly in the home, being good husbands, good wives, good fathers, good mentors, working with our local masjids, and just cleaning our own house cleaning, if you will, making sure our salah is right, making sure that we vibrate positive energy like I've talked all the time, and things will change. Like the boycotts, I mean, again, there's only so much we can do about what's going on in Palestine, but we have cost McDonald's about $12 billion, I heard. We have costed Starbucks and a lot of these other companies around the same. And again, when the Muslim dollar is focused on a singular mission and goal, I mean, we can really control some things in this world because we're not going to do it through these people. Not unless we go up there and bribe them, because all of us, they're getting their bribes. Barack Obama's top donor was Goldman Sachs. I mean, Goldman Sachs is in there with Trump. They were in there. Trump's now about to appoint BlackRock, which is even bigger than Goldman Sachs. Zionist-run financial firms. I mean, these guys have billions and billions of dollars, but collectively we do also. And the only way we're going to be able to fix the system is to first fix ourselves and ultimately focus on being better Muslims, than we are. And that's pretty much, I could go on with this topic. Sheikh, you have anything you want to add? And we could feed off of that.